So yesterday, Lily had you do a really fun exploration of objects, finding objects around your house that sink and float. But did any of you wonder why some of the things sank and why other things floated? I was curious about that too. So I did a little research, and here's what I found out. There are two things that make an object sink or float. The first thing is called buoyancy. Can you guys say buoyancy? Buoyancy. The second thing is density. Density is like how heavy something is, and buoyancy just means floats. All right, so if something floats, it's a buoyant object. If it doesn't float, then it's not buoyant. And usually, most of the time, something that's heavy will sink, something that is more dense or heavier will sink, and something that is less dense and lighter will float. So I have two spoons. I have a metal spoon and I have a plastic spoon. And think about when you hold a metal spoon in one hand and a plastic spoon in the other. Which spoon is going to be heavier, more dense? Yes, definitely the metal spoon. And the plastic spoon is less dense. It's lighter. So, do you think this dense spoon is going to be buoyant or not buoyant? Is it going to sink or float? I guess sink, just like you. I don't think it's going to be buoyant because it's really dense. It's heavy. We were right. Now this spoon, you think it's going to be buoyant, it will float, or it will be dense and not buoyant and sink? Let's see. The spoon is floating. It is buoyant. But then I started thinking about all of those really heavy cruise ships and cargo ships that I see when I'm driving over the West Seattle Bridge, and I think, whoa, those have to be really, really heavy. So how come they can float? And this is where density comes in. What density means is how much stuff something has inside it. So I have two ways to show you density. So this is a cup. And what is inside this cup? Air. Not too much. This cup is filled with beans. It is full of stuff. So it is more dense than this cup because this cup has lots of space for air. Is there a lot of space for air in this cup? Not really. It's really full. There's not a lot of air in there, but there's lots and lots of air in here. So the more air that is inside something will help it to float. And I'm going to show you how. Take a look at these two balloons. They're the same color. Are they the same size? They are not. This balloon is much bigger than this balloon. And you know what? They're not filled with the same things either. This balloon is filled with air, and this balloon is filled with water. This balloon is very light, even though it's big. This balloon is very heavy, even though it's small. Let's watch what happens when I put the big balloon in the water. Does it sink or float? It floats. Did you notice anything? I drew a black line where the water is. That's where the water stops. Did anything happen to the water when I put that balloon in? Nothing really happened to the water. Now watch and see what happens when I put this balloon in. Are you ready? Watch the water. What happened to the water? Do you see where it is now? It's all the way up here. The balloon, because it's so heavy, has had to make space inside the water for itself. And as the balloon squishes inside, the water has to go somewhere because the balloon's pushing it out of the way. Think about when you're trying to get through two people and you move them out of the way, you push them over to get through. That's what the balloon is doing to the water. It's pushing the water out so there can be space. And as it pushes the water away from it, the water goes up. So this balloon is very dense and it has to push a lot of water out of the way so that it can have some room. But the balloon weighs more, it's heavier than the water that it pushed away, which is why it sank. So the more dense an object is, the more stuff inside it, the more it will sink. So when we think about those big cruise ships, even though they're really heavy, are they small and heavy, or are they really big and heavy? They're really, really big. And inside the cruise ships, it's not completely solid. There's lots of air because there are different rooms and there are hallways and there's different spaces, so that there's a lot of air inside it. So even though it's big and even though it's heavy, it can still float because there's a lot of air inside it. And so for something to float, it needs to have air inside of it. And there's not a lot of air inside this balloon, and that's why it sank. So here's what we're going to do now, Pre-K. We are going to experiment a little bit more with boats and how heavy they can get before they start to sink. To build your boat, all you're going to need is a piece of aluminum foil. And this is going to be our boat. And the way we're going to make it, you don't need any tape or glue or scissors, is you just shape it into a boat. You could make a round boat or a square boat. I think I'm going to fold up the sides like this and kind of start to form it into a boat with some walls. And I'm just going to keep bending and make my boat. Okay, so my boat is ready. Now, take a peek inside my boat. Is my boat dense? Is there a lot of stuff inside it? No, it's not really dense at all. It's pretty empty, right? There's a lot of space in there for air. So do you think my boat will sink or float? Remember, the more air inside something, the more it will float. The more stuff, the more it will sink. So let's see what happens. It floats. Excellent. But what if we put some stuff inside our boat? What will happen? Like some coins. Now, when I drop a quarter into the water, what do you think will happen? When you feel a quarter, for how small it is it light or heavy? It's pretty heavy. So it's small and heavy. So do you think it will sink or float? Remember, if it's big and light, it will float. The more space there is for air, the more it will float. Do you think there's any air inside this quarter? Probably not. Let's see. Nope. I'll show you. It sank all the way down to the bottom. So that quarter is not buoyant. It sank. But what would happen if we put some quarters inside our boat? One quarter sank. So do you think my boat will sink when I put a quarter inside it? It still floats. That was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's still floating. 6, 7, 8, 9. Looking for the quarters. 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. I'm running out of quarters, so I'm just going to put coins in. 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. It took 20 coins for my boat to sink. I wonder if I built a different shaped boat, if it would be able to hold more coins. So that is your science experiment for today. Get some aluminum foil from your kitchen and build a couple boats and see how many objects your boat can hold before it sinks. And you can keep track of it. And maybe I'm going to redesign my boat. I might unfold it and make the walls a little taller and make the bottom a little deeper and see if that helps to float. Keep switching up your boat and seeing what happens every time you change it.